how did the players sort of respond to sort of the message you sent after the Gardner-Webb game?
Great yesterday, but that's, as we say, that's only one day, but if we can pick it up and sustain it like we did yesterday, then I think we'll be in a real good place. So I really enjoyed watching them play yesterday and watching them compete, and appreciated the fact that they received the message as it was intended and really tried to do something about it. So again, you just hope that you can have carryover, because habits aren't built in one day. You hope that you can have carryover.
In what ways do you were you sort of looking for that message to manifest itself? Like, was it just sort of
just in the effort and energy and intensity on defense.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like we got leads in both of the first two games, and we went into we can outscore them mode, and instead of let's be the best we can be on both ends mode, which is the place that we need to be, the mode that we need to be in, because that's the only thing that's going to last, and that's the only thing that's going to help us get to where it is that we want to go. We can get to any place if we don't care where we're going. But if we care about where we're going, then we're going to have to be in the mode of using every opportunity to get better and trying to maximize it and take advantage of it.
In terms of really getting those defensive switches down, how close, like through all the offseason, now through 2 games here, I mean, how close or how far away do you think you guys are to getting?
Well, we're negotiating the switches fine. What we're not doing is we're not guarding the ball well, and in some instances that's limitation. It's not desire. Some of it's limitation. Some of it is there's been some confusion caused that's created problems in guarding the ball. But more than anything else, it's been a lack of awareness on the guys' part off the ball, in terms of support and in terms of positioning, in terms of shrinking the floor, in terms of being off to the ball, and so not only do we have to do a better job with the guy that's actually covering the ball, we have to do a better job with the other 4 guys, because as we always say, five guys have to guard the ball, and 5 guys have to guard the ball screen, 5 guys have to guard the ball, and so that's not what we're just not doing that. We got 1 guy trying to guard the ball and 4 guys standing next to their guy looking at the 1 guy trying to guard the ball instead of 5 guys guarding the ball.
How much of playing good defense and being a good defender comes back and is tied to to something as basic as effort?
A lot of it is. A lot of it is effort. It's energy. It's attitude. It's attention to detail, and we have some guys that every guy just wants to play the game in an instinctive fashion to where he doesn't have to think. But when you get to higher levels of basketball, you have to know how to think and apply what you've learned and put it into use. And we have guys that it's not that they're uncoachable, it's that they're not used to taking instruction and applying it. And so, and I'm talking about younger guys in this instance. I'm not talking about the older guys. So we have to have some of those younger guys take the instruction and apply it and put it into use, because they've got to open their minds to learning, because that's one of the primary ways that they can improve, is to learn and to get smarter. At this point in the year, you don't get a lot better physically. Okay, you kind of, for the most part, are who you are or who you're going to be physically for the remainder of the season. Your skill level may go up a little bit, particularly if you're younger, but by and large, your skill level is going to remain the same. So one of the only ways to progress is to become more intelligent and more knowledgeable about the game, and we have some guys that need to do that.
So you started. How's your scouting of SMU gone?
Well, we've seen both of their games, and we're, pretty familiar with what they've done in the past anyway. Tim coached them in the first 9 games of last season, and so I think we have a good feel for what they're going to do, and their team, it's a lot like us. It's sort of point guard by committee. A lot of guys that can shoot and score and handle the ball. So they have some offensive flexibility, and just like we do. So it'll just come down to playing hard and rebounding and taking care of the ball, and kind of the basics of basketball. It's we're not going to do anything to trick them. I really don't think that they'll do anything to trick us. I think it's just a matter of which team does what they do the best and gives the best effort, particularly defensively and on the backboards. And again, you can't have a bunch of turnovers and expect to win a tough game like that. And so if we take care of the ball and defend and rebound, then I think we'll give ourselves every chance to win.
I'm kind of curious with sort of the short turnaround after the SMU game. How do you go about do you do any scouting of the next 2 opponents, or are you entirely focused on SMU, or do you kind of do sort of?
Are you talking about me personally or my staff?
Your staff.
No, I've got one guy who's spent his entire time on Michigan, another guy who spent his entire time on Marquette, and a third guy that's spent his entire time on SMU. So we'll have scouting reports ready before we even play SMU. And then we'll obviously hopefully gain more information after watching Michigan and Marquette play, because we'll see that game live after hours. But yeah, we've been working on those 2 teams already, and I think that's what everybody does. You have to have that stuff ready because you can't get it ready. And now, in terms of the team, there's probably one thing that we will have done in practice, because it's pretty unique and special to one team, that we would go over prior to even the SMU game, just because we need a few reps in doing what we need to do to deal with that, because it's not something that you see often, and so it sort of introduces a new concept to our team, and so we'll have to cover that, but or we'll have that covered before, like I said, before we even play SMU, in the event that we play the one team that does do that.
We were talking on a Monday about you still kind of learning new things about your team, still trying to figure guys out. I mean, how much does the dynamic change? When you guys go, go from the off season where you're spending 6 or 7 months to get together, but you're largely kind of with yourselves, largely playing against each other, to when games actually start. Do you feel like you really start to learn more things once you guys, play outside of themselves, play
right.
opponents?
Yeah, I think you certainly learn more about your team as you watch them play other people, because each guy's competitive nature is different, and so you take a guy like Jamel Artis, who might shoot the ball from 3 for a pretty average percentage in practice, but it elevates in a game because that's just sort of who Jamel is. He just elevates his game when the games begin. And there aren't very many guys like that, but he is. There might be other guys that shoot the heck out of it in practice, and when the games get there, then they couldn't hit their butt with either hand. So it's just one of those things, and that's what you start learning about your guys, because you don't know how they're going to react, in the fire, and so you don't know how they're going to compete. You don't know how they're going to deal with adversity. Lots of things, and so those are things. You don't know how they're going to deal with success. We talk in terms of dealing with adversity a lot. Sometimes it's just as difficult to deal with success. And guys have just as much trouble dealing with success as they do with adversity.
How did Tim Jankovic first get on your radar when you got to Vandy? Oh, I think unless I saw the wrong thing, was he coaching like a JUCO ball right before?
Yeah, Tim and I had been, we had grown up in the business together. We were both young assistants at the same time and got to know each other. I don't remember how we really got to know each other, but one way or another we became acquainted and had some unique instances where I remember one where I think he was an assistant. Well, I know he was an assistant. I don't remember where because he had a number of assistant jobs. Maybe it could have been at Oklahoma State or could have been at Baylor or it could one of those places. And I was an assistant at, I think it was Kansas. And we ended up in the same gate in the Dallas airport at about 5 a.m. one morning, and we're the only two guys on this little commuter plane going to a junior college event. And we were already friends before that, but there were just a few things like that. We just sort of grew up in the business together and got to know each other, and so became good friends, and I actually almost hired him on my staff one time at Illinois State, and then he got the Hutch JUCO job, and then when I went to Vanderbilt, he wanted to come, and so I hired him with me at Vanderbilt. So that's kind of how that all happened.
Kevin, for a lot of years when it was still in the Big East, playing at Madison Square Garden was a big deal for this program as far as visibility in that market and recruiting. It seemed like even before you got here, that sort of focus had shifted, and that the Virginia, D.C., Maryland area was going to be more important for this program going forward. Is that sort of, you agree with that assessment, and what then is the importance of playing games in a place like this?
Well, I think first of all, it's really an honor and a privilege for the guys to get to play there. I played my last college game there, and so that's I think it's a special opportunity for players to get to play there because of all the history and tradition that's gone on with the Garden. I can see why the recruiting focus shifted, because when you're going back there to play in the Big East tournament every year, that's something that kids that you would recruit would get excited about. Now that's not the case anymore, and it hasn't been the case for a few years, and so I can see the D.C. market is obviously more in the ACC footprint, and so it's only sort of natural in terms of your thinking to shift your focus to maybe another area. Not entirely, because you still want to recruit New York, but I know there was quite a string of players that came from up there to down here to play and had great success, so hopefully that's something that we can utilize, being up there, having the ACC tournament up there in the Barclays Center and that sort of thing. Hopefully it's something that we can take advantage of and gain some visibility from. But I think when kids know that you're coming up there every year, and you're also coming up there to play St. John's, and you're going to be there to play Rutgers back in those days, and you're going to be there to, you're going to have some Syracuse and that whole thing, I think it probably gave this program more traction with those kids, because it was just sort of the place for the Big East, so that's kind of my take on it, but again, we hope that this will give us some additional visibility there and give us some opportunities.
So with that sort of changing landscape, would you consider playing in New York every season like this team has, something that's necessarily really important going forward, or you just want to be in the best tournament no matter where it is?
Yeah, I hadn't really given it thought in terms of trying to play in New York City every year. Obviously, we'll be playing in New York every year because we still make the trip to Syracuse. But I hadn't really given that a lot of thought. But I guess my thoughts right now would be that we would probably want to be in New York as much as we could, but at the same time find the best of both worlds and play in the best tournaments that we could be in also.
Coach, you were talking about the difference between practice and games, and as far as that goes, the performance of each guy. Wondering how you're assessing your younger bench players, whether it be Justice or Corey or Damon, any of those guys, because I know your rotation's a little short right now. You're trying to find that next guy to step in, be the 7, 8, 9. What's your assessment of those guys and how they're performing in practice as opposed to a game?
I think that those, by and large, those guys, whoever those guys are, have looked better in practice than they have in games thus far. And we have some ground to cover with some of them before I feel like that they're going to be game ready for the high level games. You know, SMU and Michigan and Marquette. I mean, we've got some ground to cover before some of those guys, some of those bench guys are ready to compete successfully in those games. In my opinion, I wish that weren't the case, but that's the assessment of the staff, and I think that's just where we're at.